Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I wasn't supposed to know. But I did. And in a way, I wish I hadn't. It all started on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anything to be out of the ordinary. But sometimes life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. I had come home early from work that day. No reason, really, just one of those days when I felt like I needed to be home. Sylvia, my wife, was upstairs in the bedroom. I could hear the faint sound of her talking on the phone, but I figured it was just a casual conversation with a friend or a family member. It wasn't the first time I'd heard her talking on the phone while I was home, and it didn't raise any red flags. But that afternoon, something made me pause. The tone in her voice was different. She wasn't laughing, like she usually does with her friends. It wasn't light-hearted chatter. This was heavier. And when I caught a snippet of what she was saying, I stopped in my tracks. Honestly, I think I'd be happier without him. I just feel like I'm trapped. I don't even know if I love him anymore. Those words hit me like a freight train. I don't even think I breathed for a few seconds. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Sylvia, my wife of 12 years, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was saying she'd be happier without me? My heart raced as I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. I wanted to burst into the room, demand an explanation, but I couldn't move. I had heard it with my own ears, but it didn't seem real. How had we gotten here? What was she thinking? The conversation continued, and I strained to listen, even though I knew it wasn't right. But I couldn't help it. I needed to hear more. I just don't know how to leave him, though, Sylvia continued. He's a good man, but I'm not in love with him anymore. I feel like I've been going through the motions for years. I don't know how to get out of this, but I can't keep living a lie. I felt a sickening wave of nausea roll through me. I wanted to scream, to demand that she tell me everything right then and there, but I didn't. I stood there, paralyzed, trying to digest what I had just overheard. Was this some kind of joke? A bad dream? Or was it the truth? I wish I could say that in that moment, I confronted her. That I was strong enough to walk up those stairs and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I quietly retreated to the living room and sat down, my mind in a complete whirlwind. Sylvia had always been my best friend, my partner. We'd shared so much together, good times and bad, and now it felt like everything was unraveling in a matter of seconds. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something. This wasn't the first time I'd felt like there was something wrong. There had been small signs, little moments where I had wondered if maybe things weren't as perfect as I had convinced myself they were. Sylvia had become more distant lately. She was on her phone more, texting more than usual. We didn't laugh together the way we used to. The spark seemed to be fading, and I couldn't pinpoint why. But hearing those words, hearing her say that she would be happier without me, was like a slap in the face. It was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. And as painful as it was to admit, I realized I had to face the truth, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. So, I made a decision. I decided to give Sylvia what she said she wanted. If she truly thought she'd be happier without me, then maybe it was time to let her go. I wasn't going to beg her to stay, to convince her that we could make it work. If she had already made up her mind, if she believed that she was better off without me, then who was I to keep her trapped in a marriage where she wasn't happy? I didn't tell her that I had overheard her. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I waited. I gave her space, just like she had been asking for. I let her breathe. And in the days that followed, something unexpected happened. The moment I started stepping back, the moment I gave her that space, everything shifted. Sylvia's behavior changed. At first, it seemed like she was relieved, like she was finally free to make the decision she had been toying with. But then, something strange occurred. She began to open up in ways I hadn't seen in years. She started to talk to me again, really talk to me, in a way she hadn't done in a long time. It was confusing. The more space I gave her, the more she seemed to need me. She didn't just pull away like I expected. Instead, she started to question things. She started to talk about what she wanted out of life, what she had been missing. We started having conversations that we had been avoiding for years. Conversations about our marriage, our future, and where we had gone wrong. But there was a twist I wasn't prepared for. As Sylvia began to open up, I realized that she wasn't the only one who had been dissatisfied. I had been complacent, too. I had let our marriage slide into a routine. I had taken her for granted. And as much as she felt like she was suffocating, I realized that I had been, too. We had both been caught in a cycle of expectations and assumptions. We had stopped really seeing each other. It wasn't all roses and rainbows from there. In fact, things got worse before they got better. Sylvia started staying out later, and I began to notice the subtle changes in her behavior. But as time passed, we came to an understanding, slowly, painfully, but we began to talk about everything. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't comfortable, but it was real. I gave her the chance to leave. I didn't beg her to stay. I told her that if she truly believed she'd be happier without me, then I would give her that. But it turns out, giving her that space, giving her the freedom to make her own choice, was the thing that ultimately made her reconsider everything. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the life we had built, while imperfect, was something worth fighting for. And so she stayed. But not because I begged her to, not because I forced her, but because, in the end, giving her that chance, that freedom, showed her what she had almost lost. And it shocked everyone, especially me, to realize that sometimes stepping away is the only way to truly come together. I spent that night in a haze. I couldn't stop replaying what I had overheard in my head. Sylvia's words, those piercing words, echoed in my mind as I tried to distract myself. The kids were at their friend's house, and the house felt eerily quiet. I kept glancing at my phone, wondering if she would reach out, if she would confront me about what I had overheard. But the silence stretched on, and I could feel the weight of it in my chest. The next morning, things felt strange. Sylvia didn't act any differently at first. She was just going through the motions, making breakfast, getting the kids ready, like everything was fine. But I could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't the kind of tension that comes from arguing. No, it was subtler, like we were both walking on a tightrope, unsure of whether we'd fall off or keep going. I didn't know what to say to her. What could I say? How do you address something like that? How do you confront your wife about a truth you weren't supposed to know? I had no answers. And yet, every part of me screamed to ask her, to demand an explanation, to make her see how much this was tearing me apart. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. I waited for her to bring it up, for her to acknowledge the elephant in the room. But she didn't. She just kept going, as though nothing had changed. And that's when it hit me. Maybe she wasn't going to bring it up. Maybe she was waiting for me to say something, to do something. But I couldn't figure out what that something was. So, I kept quiet. Days passed, and we fell into this strange, limbo-like state. I didn't know where we stood. Sylvia started to pull back even more. She was on her phone more often, texting and laughing with friends, leaving me to wonder if the person she was talking to was the same one she'd been talking to when I overheard her. But I couldn't bring myself to ask. Not yet. I wasn't the kind of guy to ignore things, but I had no idea how to confront this. I felt like I was in the dark, and every time I thought about asking her what was really going on, I was hit with a wave of fear. What if it was worse than I imagined? What if she was already making plans to leave? I had to do something, but what? The question haunted me every moment I spent in that house. And yet, every time I looked at her, every time she smiled or did something so normal, my heart would tighten, because I wasn't sure if I really knew her anymore. Was this the same woman who had once told me I was her best friend? Had I failed her that badly? It wasn't long before I realized something else. I was starting to pull away, too. The silence between us, the distance, it was eating away at me. But it wasn't just the silence that bothered me. It was the feeling that we were both pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. And in a way, I started to understand why she felt like she was trapped. But still, I couldn't let go. I wasn't ready to give up. So, I decided to give her space. Maybe that was what she needed. I didn't confront her directly about what I had overheard. Instead, I started to step back, to let her breathe. I didn't know if this was the right thing to do. I didn't know if I was just prolonging the inevitable. But I couldn't just ignore her wishes. I had to give her that chance, the chance she thought she needed. It's strange how space can change things. When I gave her the room to breathe, things started shifting, slowly, almost imperceptibly. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what changed, but it was there. Maybe it was my own decision to let her go, or maybe it was something deeper, something she had been too afraid to face before. But whatever it was, it created a crack in the wall between us. And then, out of nowhere, she did something that completely caught me off guard. It was late one evening when Sylvia did something that left me utterly stunned. I'd been expecting her to pull away further, to keep her distance, but instead, she came to me. Not in the way I thought she would, not with an apology or a confrontation. No, it was something much more subtle. She just sat down next to me on the couch. The silence between us felt heavier than ever, but I could feel something in the air had changed. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "About everything. About us." I froze. This was it, I thought. She was either going to confess that she wanted out or tell me that she was ready to work on things. I could barely breathe, the anticipation clawing at my chest. But Sylvia didn't go down either of those paths. Instead, she said something that completely threw me off course. "I think I've been unfair. To you, to us." She paused, looking at her hands. "I've been so focused on what's wrong, I forgot to see what's right. And I've been hiding from it. From you. From myself." My heart pounded in my ears. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? I didn't dare speak. I just watched her, waiting for more, for something to make sense of the mess we were in. "I felt lost," Sylvia continued, her voice breaking slightly. "And I've been so angry, not at you, but at myself. At the fact that I've let us get here, that I've let us drift apart." I felt a strange wave of relief wash over me. She wasn't blaming me, not entirely. She wasn't saying she didn't love me anymore. She was acknowledging the cracks, the tension, the mistakes. And somehow, hearing her say it out loud felt like a moment of clarity. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. "What are you saying?" I asked quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "Are you saying you want to stay? Or?" Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in a long while, I saw vulnerability. She didn't know how to answer. There was no simple yes or no that could fix this. What we had wasn't something that could be patched up in a moment. It was broken, fractured by years of silence and unmet needs. Still, the fact that she was talking to me, really talking to me, was something I hadn't expected. "I don't know what I want," Sylvia said after a long pause. "I've been so confused. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us." Her words felt like a lifeline, and I grabbed onto them like they were my last hope. But even as I felt this spark of hope, I knew better than to get too comfortable. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. Whatever we were about to face, it was going to take more than just words. It was going to take action, and I wasn't sure we were both ready for what was to come. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. Sylvia was trying, I could tell. She was more present, more engaged than she had been in months. We started doing little things together again, talking over coffee, watching movies, even laughing at stupid jokes. But each time we shared a quiet moment, there was an undercurrent of tension, like both of us were waiting for something to break. I tried to convince myself that things were getting better, that we were on the right path. But the truth was, I wasn't sure how much I believed it. One evening, as we sat in the living room together, I decided to push forward. If we were going to try to make this work, we needed to be brutally honest with each other. So, I asked the question that had been eating at me ever since that night I overheard her phone call. "Why did you say that?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with apprehension. "Why did you say you'd be happier without me?" Sylvia's face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might pull away. But instead, she looked me straight in the eyes, as if searching for the right words. "I was scared," she said quietly. "I didn't know how to talk to you about how I was feeling. I didn't know how to admit that I was unhappy, that I was struggling. It was easier to say that, to make myself believe that I could be better off without you, than to face the truth of what was really happening between us." Her words hung in the air, heavy and painful. I didn't know how to respond. I had been holding on to so much resentment for what she had said that hearing her explain it, hearing her admit how lost she felt, was almost too much to bear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. "I never meant to hurt you. But I didn't know how to tell you I was feeling suffocated. I didn't know how to fix what was broken." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't the moment to break down, to let the weight of everything crush me. I had to be strong, for both of us. "I'm not perfect either," I admitted, surprising myself. "I've been distant too. I haven't been the husband I should have been. I've let this go on for too long, and I didn't even see it." For the first time in a long time, we were speaking honestly. No more hiding behind pride or assumptions. Just the raw truth of what we had become and what we were willing to fight for. Sylvia reached out and took my hand, her grip tentative but there. "I don't know what's going to happen," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But I want to try. I want to figure this out. Together." And in that moment, I realized that we weren't at the end yet. Maybe we were just at the beginning of something new. Something painful, something hard, but maybe, just maybe, something worth fighting for. Days passed, and while things seemed to settle in some ways, I could feel an undercurrent of unease running through me. Sylvia had become more present, more willing to talk, to make the effort. But there was still something that gnawed at me, a lingering question that refused to fade. Was this real? Could we really come back from the brink of whatever this was? One night, after the kids had gone to bed, we sat down on the couch together. She was quieter than usual, which wasn't like her. I could see the weight of her thoughts in her eyes, the same way I had seen it in mine for days. It wasn't just that she had confessed her feelings to me. It was everything that came after. She was trying, but I wasn't sure I was. "You've been different," Sylvia said, breaking the silence between us. Her voice was careful, as if she was afraid of what would come next. "And I've noticed it. You're not really here, are you?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized I'd been so obvious. But now that she mentioned it, I could see it. The truth was, I was holding back. I wasn't sure I could trust the process. It felt like we were walking through a minefield, and I didn't know where the next step would take me. "I'm trying," I said, my voice betraying a hint of frustration. "But it's hard. I don't know if I can just forget what happened." There it was, the heart of the matter. I hadn't forgiven her for what I had overheard, not completely. I couldn't just pretend like everything was fine when, deep down, the image of her saying she would be happier without me still haunted me. Sylvia sighed, rubbing her eyes. "I get it. I'm not asking you to forget, but I need you to be here. Really here. If we're going to fix this, I need you to fight for us too." Those words struck me. Fight for us. Could I do that? Could I put myself out there again, knowing how easily everything could fall apart? I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, the weight of the question hanging in the air. I was terrified of what might come next. But as I looked at Sylvia, something shifted in me. Maybe it wasn't about fixing everything at once. Maybe it was about taking the small steps, being there when it mattered, even if it felt impossible. And that's when I realized something. We weren't done yet. We were just beginning. But it wasn't going to be easy. The days following our conversation felt like they were moving in slow motion. Sylvia and I were walking this fine line between rebuilding something we both felt slipping away and holding back the floodgates of everything that had been left unsaid. I had hoped that once we started talking, once we faced the uncomfortable truth, things would begin to feel easier. But they didn't. Instead, there was this constant tension hanging over us, as though both of us were afraid to let our guard down completely. Sylvia tried. I could see it in the way she'd approach me with little gestures, small touches, fleeting moments of warmth, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to just feel like I wasn't being pushed away. I needed more. One evening, while we were sitting down for dinner, I noticed how quietly we were eating. The kids were talking, but Sylvia and I, we barely exchanged words. The silence wasn't comfortable, like the silence of two people just enjoying each other's company. It was the silence of uncertainty, of not knowing where to go next. After dinner, as we cleaned up, I decided to break the quiet. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted, my voice lower than I intended. Sylvia looked up, surprised by the honesty in my tone. "I don't know how to move forward when I'm still not sure what's going on inside me." She set the dish in her hands down and looked at me. Her expression was guarded, but I could see a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I don't know either," she said softly. "But I'm trying. I'm really trying." The frustration in her voice mirrored my own. It was clear that we were both struggling, but the effort was there. I couldn't deny that. I just didn't know if it was enough. That night, as we lay in bed, I tried to sleep, but the words from that phone call I overheard kept replaying in my mind. I think I'd be happier without him. It didn't matter how many times I told myself it was just a fleeting thought, a moment of weakness, it still hurt. I had heard the raw honesty in her voice, and it felt like it was still there, hanging between us, even now. I couldn't shake the image of Sylvia thinking she would be better off without me. No matter how much she tried to show me she was present, I couldn't erase the memory of what she had said. But as the days passed, I started to wonder if maybe this was a turning point. What if this was the moment we both needed? We had spent so many years stuck in the routine of marriage, of parenthood, of just getting by, that we had forgotten how to communicate. Maybe we had never truly communicated at all. One afternoon, Sylvia surprised me. She suggested we go away for the weekend, just the two of us. It wasn't something we had done in years, and I almost hesitated to say yes. I had never felt more unsure of our relationship, but I also knew that if we were going to fix things, we needed time away from the noise of everyday life. We needed to reconnect, even if it felt impossible. That weekend was a turning point, though not in the way I expected. We went to a small cabin by the lake. The view was peaceful, almost serene, but neither of us was in the right frame of mind to enjoy it. We spent the first evening in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. But by the second day, something shifted. Sylvia and I took a walk by the water, the air cool and crisp, the sound of the lake's waves gently lapping at the shore. It was then, as we walked in silence, that Sylvia finally spoke. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice uncertain. "About everything. About how we've changed, about how I've changed." I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure of where she was going with this. Was she finally going to say what I was afraid of? That she was done? She stopped walking, turning to face me. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable. "I think I've been running away from my own feelings. I've been so caught up in thinking that maybe I wasn't happy with you that I forgot what we had. I didn't realize how much I needed you, how much I still need you. But I've been scared to admit that. Scared of what it means." I didn't know how to respond. It felt like I was hearing these words for the first time, words I had longed to hear, but wasn't sure would ever come. "I've been afraid, too," I admitted, my voice rough. "Afraid that if I let myself trust you again, I'd get hurt. Afraid that maybe I was already too far gone." For a moment, we just stood there, the weight of our emotions hanging in the air. Then, Sylvia did something I wasn't prepared for. She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "I don't know what the future holds, but I want to try," she said, her voice steady. "I want to try to rebuild what we lost. I know it won't be easy. It might take a long time, but I'm willing to fight for us, if you are." In that moment, I realized that I was, too. Despite the hurt, despite the fear, I was willing to fight. Not because it would be easy, but because maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The weekend ended, and we returned home, but something had changed. We weren't whole again, not yet, but we were closer to something real. We had taken a step, however small, toward understanding each other in a way we hadn't before. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both walking in the same direction. The following week felt like a test. Sylvia and I had taken those small steps forward, but the path ahead was jagged and uncertain. We were no longer just pretending everything was fine, but we weren't exactly thriving either. It was as if we had put down the pieces of a puzzle, but we still weren't sure how to fit them together. One night, about a week after our weekend away, something happened that made everything feel real. Sylvia and I were sitting on the couch, the kids in bed, and we had been talking about nothing in particular, just trying to keep the conversation light. But then, out of nowhere, Sylvia's expression changed. She turned to me with a serious look in her eyes, and I immediately felt a chill run through me. "I've been thinking a lot," she said quietly, "and I realized something important." My heart raced. What was she about to say? Had she changed her mind? I had no idea what to expect. "I've been hiding something from you," Sylvia continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Not just from you, but from myself. I've been trying to convince myself that it was you, that it was our relationship that was broken. But the truth is, I've been unhappy with myself for a long time." The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I was speechless. Was she saying this because of me? Was I the problem? But then, as she spoke more, I began to understand. This wasn't just about our marriage. It was about her. I felt lost, like I had lost who I was, she explained. I was so caught up in trying to figure out what was wrong between us that I forgot to look at myself. I didn't even know who I was anymore, and I think that's why I pushed you away. It wasn't just about our relationship, it was about me. Her words were raw, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her struggle. She wasn't just trying to fix our marriage, she was trying to fix herself. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," Sylvia added, her eyes brimming with tears. "But I wanted you to know the truth. I didn't want to keep pretending." I sat there in silence, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. I knew I had been carrying my own fears and doubts about what had happened between us, but hearing her speak so honestly about her own pain made me realize how much we had both been hurting. "I don't know what to say," I finally managed to say, my voice hoarse. But thank you for telling me, for not keeping it inside anymore. She smiled weakly, but the sadness in her eyes didn't fade. I don't expect it to be easy, she said. But I want to try. I want to really try, for both of us. The conversation didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the pain, and it didn't magically make everything right. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were being honest with each other. And that honesty, no matter how painful, felt like the first step towards something real. That night, we didn't fix our marriage, and we didn't even know where we were headed. But we both knew one thing. We couldn't keep pretending. And maybe, just maybe, the truth would be the thing that saved us. The days after Sylvia's confession were a whirlwind. I had no idea how to process everything she had said. For years, I had blamed myself for the distance between us, for the cracks in our marriage, but now I understood that there was more to the story than I had realized. Sylvia had been struggling with herself, with who she was, and that had seeped into every corner of our relationship. But as much as I wanted to be there for her, to support her in this journey of self-discovery, I couldn't ignore the fact that I had my own fears and doubts. I hadn't completely forgiven her for what I had overheard, and though she had opened up to me, I still wasn't sure if I could let go of the hurt. That night, after she told me everything, I decided to give us some space. Not to avoid her, but to figure out what I needed to. We both had our work cut out for us. It wasn't easy. The next few days were filled with moments of silence, punctuated by small conversations about the kids, about the house, about anything that didn't touch the deeper issue between us. Sylvia seemed different, though, more introspective, more aware of the way we were slipping into old patterns. I could feel her trying to reach me, but I wasn't ready to meet her halfway yet. Then, one evening, Sylvia did something unexpected. She came to me while I was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book. She sat down beside me, close enough for me to feel her warmth, but not close enough for us to be together. There was something in her eyes, something vulnerable, something that told me she wasn't just here to ask for forgiveness, but for a chance. A real chance. I know I've hurt you, she started softly, her voice filled with regret. And I can't undo that. But I can try. I can show you that I'm willing to do the work, to be who you need me to be. I stayed quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. I wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Instead, I just looked at her, really looked at her, because for the first time in a long time, I saw the person I married, not the woman who had been hiding behind walls of silence. I don't expect things to be perfect overnight, Sylvia continued, her hands fidgeting in her lap. But I want to start fresh. I want to be open with you, not just about my past mistakes, but about everything. I'm not asking you to forget what happened, but to believe in what we could be. If we both try. I didn't respond right away, but something inside me shifted. I realized that we were at a crossroads. I could either keep holding on to the anger and pain, letting it control me, or I could take a leap of faith and try to rebuild. I couldn't lie to myself. I wasn't sure if we could ever truly go back to the way things were, but I wasn't ready to give up either. I had seen glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, and that was enough to keep me from walking away. I don't know if I can just forget, I finally said, my voice quiet. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can make this work. Together. Sylvia's eyes brightened slightly, but there was no triumphant smile, no relief on her face. She knew better than anyone that words were easy, but actions spoke louder. I could see it in her eyes. This was just the beginning. But it was a beginning I was willing to face with her. The next few weeks were difficult, filled with moments of doubt and frustration. But we also started to rebuild, piece by piece. We went on walks, talked about our past, and, slowly, started to understand each other in ways we never had before. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but we were trying. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch together, I realized something. Maybe we hadn't fixed everything, but we had made a choice. A choice to stay, to work through the pain, to fight for what we still had. And in that moment, I knew we weren't finished yet. Not by a long shot. And though the road ahead would be difficult, something had changed. We were both willing to face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was, and to move forward, together. Months had passed since that night, when Sylvia opened up, and I had been surprised at how much we had changed. The journey wasn't without its bumps, and we had both faltered, but I began to see things differently. I wasn't looking for perfection anymore. I didn't need a flawless relationship, but I needed honesty, effort, and the willingness to be vulnerable. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both giving that. But, just as things seemed to be settling down, life had one last test for us. I was at work one afternoon when I received a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have picked up, but something in my gut told me I needed to. It wasn't a pleasant conversation. "Is this Grant?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice tight. "I think you should know something. It's about Sylvia." My heart skipped a beat. My stomach sank. The voice on the phone belonged to a man, someone who, it turned out, had been in Sylvia's life far more recently than I ever imagined. He told me they had been seeing each other, meeting in secret for months. The betrayal hit harder than I could have imagined. The pain wasn't just from her affair, but the fact that she had promised to rebuild with me, had promised to try, and still chose to lie, to keep that part of her life hidden. The more he spoke, the more I could feel everything crumbling around me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about my own dignity, my own self-worth. I had been vulnerable. I had tried to open up and be the man she needed, only to be met with more lies. I ended the call and sat in stunned silence for a moment, letting the reality of it all sink in. And then, something inside me clicked. I had to act, and I had to act fast. I wasn't going to be the fool. Not again. That evening, when Sylvia came home, I could feel the tension in the air. She was acting different, distracted, avoiding eye contact. She had no idea that I knew the truth. "Is everything okay?" I asked, keeping my tone calm, almost casual. She hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, just work stuff." I couldn't take it anymore. The truth, the betrayal, it burned too much. I couldn't just sit there pretending like nothing had happened. "I know," I said, my voice steady but full of pain. "I know about him, Sylvia." Her face went white. For the first time, I saw the walls crack, the facade slip. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. "I thought we were rebuilding," I said, the words coming out in a low whisper. "I thought you were trying to fix things with me. But you were lying. You were with someone else behind my back. While I was trying to be the husband you needed, you were with him." She looked like she was about to cry, her hands shaking as she reached for me, but I stepped back. "You don't get to apologize anymore, Sylvia. Not after everything. Not after you made me think we had a chance." I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it was too late. I wasn't the same man who would fall for apologies or empty promises anymore. I had given her the chance to be honest, to fix what she had broken, but she had chosen to betray me instead. "You don't get to destroy everything we've worked for and expect me to just forgive you," I continued. "I deserve better than this." I watched her face crumble as the reality of what I was saying hit her. But there was something inside me, something that had been broken before, finally clicking into place. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I wasn't going to sit around letting her get away with it. The weeks that followed were a blur. Sylvia begged me to forgive her, to work through it, but I was done. I had tried. I had given everything, but now I saw things clearly. I didn't need to fix what she had broken. I needed to walk away. I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something I wanted, but it was necessary. Sylvia's actions were her own, and as much as I had once wanted to salvage our family, I realized that I couldn't do it at the cost of my own self-respect. And as time went on, I saw Sylvia's life unravel. Her affair ended, and she was left alone, with no one to turn to. The karma that followed her, the consequences of her betrayal, hit harder than I think she had ever imagined. I had moved on, focusing on my kids, building a life that wasn't defined by lies, and rediscovering my own happiness. For the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't feel trapped by expectations or the shadow of someone else's mistakes. I was finally able to see who I was and what I deserved. And I realized something in that moment. In the end, giving Sylvia the chance to make her choice, to have everything she thought she wanted, had been the best decision I ever made. Because sometimes, you have to let someone go in order to save yourself. And the truth is, the only person I needed to be happy with was myself. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.